everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Big Baby and STARCRASHER at KINGCOMICS.CA. Today, guys, it is Keith Giffen Day, so we're taking a look at Dr. Fate issue number 3, cover dated September 1987, part 3 of 4 of a 4-part miniseries. And I'm going to pause it here, make some wild, guesses, follow my hunches here, put out some hypotheses, right? Many hypotheses. The plural of hypothesis is hypotheses, I think. And kind of go on a limb here and talk a little bit about Todd McFarlane and Erik Larsen, what they're doing at this point in time in September 1987. Now, not sure of the exact timeline here, but I'm pretty sure at this point McFarlane's done with Infinity Inc. and maybe he's doing Batman Year 2, somewhere around there, and then eventually to do Invasion 1988 before moving on to Marvel and Amazing Spider-Man. On the Hulk before Amazing Spider-Man. And then Erik Larsen doing some Doom Patrol stuff around this time. And why do I mention this? Well, I feel like this issue here, no one's ever really talked about this, but you have to think, again, those two guys are working at DC at the time. They're known to look at other guys' work, right? Professionals do that. They look what the other guys are doing, if they can, top them or take some of their concepts maybe and manipulate them a little bit, which is what I'm kind of gearing towards here. You get a little bit on the cover here, but is there anyone else who kind of feels like this head here, which is basically representing the demonic entity that has taken over the Fate persona and powers in this miniseries, or at least in the last couple of issues, to me is like a prototype of Venom. McFarlane worked on him first, kind of is credited with the design, and then Larsen kind of came on later. McFarlane already kind of started with a more subdued version of Venom, then he got a little crazier with sharper teeth, and then when Larsen came on, he really exaggerated the teeth and the tongue and stuff. Really, Larsen's the one who really gave us the extreme kind of, or the most extreme version of Venom, I guess, that 90s Venom that we all remember. McFarlane's first kind of go at it was a little bit more subdued, but the second go did have the sharp teeth like present here. So I posit that at the time where they're both working at DC, they probably have seen Keith Giffen's stuff, maybe are jiving with it and enjoying some of it, and maybe a little bit stayed in McFarlane's mind when doing the design for Venom. I mean, even down here, right? Later on with the symbiotes and how Venom would evolve and all the storylines where multiple people are taken over by Venom or the symbiote. The idea is all here on the cover already of Dr. Fate in 1987, Dr. Fate issue 3. So that's all I got to say about the cover. Really, it's a pretty striking one. It's eye-catching. I like it. Giffen, this period here, we're moving more and more towards the Giffen that I really like, which is the Lobo infanticide / Trencher Keith Giffen. We're working our way towards that, but I can already see here, the beginnings of that style kind of forming as he slowly moves away more from the Kirby stuff. It's always like whatever he copies, right? We've seen Defenders where he really kind of copies the Kirby style. And then he moves on to what he's still kind of doing here a little bit, but slowly and surely it's morphing into its own thing, is the Munoz style that we've talked about in past reviews. The Alex Sinner comic strip that you can check out that's in black and white that also inspired Frank Miller, the stark contrast and stuff. So he's doing a lot of that here, but slowly but surely it's like he's taken what works for him in those styles and those aesthetics and, combining it into his own thing. So I feel like throughout this issue here, we're going to get some Kirby stuff. We're going to get some Munoz stuff and a hybrid of that. We're going to get a little bit of Steve Ditko too. And a lot of what he's doing with some of the design of, again, the demon or the demonic form of Dr. Fate, and specifically the cape too, I want to talk about for Todd McFarlane. So pretty cool splash page when we open up, right? I like all the movement that the clouds and the kind of the fog and stuff in the background really add to the image, as well as the layering of it. I've talked about how he uses simple, stark compositions on this miniseries that are really effective, and a lot of surrealist elements, as you can see here. Once again, these floating mouths all over the place, right? Just an interesting, weird, surrealist, maybe slightly Ghostbusters-y kind of vibe to it in some instances. I really enjoy it. So here's the shot that I thought, wow, when I looked at this here, right, I could see how McFarlane looking at this could extrapolate some of the stuff he was doing later on with the Spawn cape, but that he started doing already, early on, I guess probably around this time with Batman Year 2, right? So that already kind of coincide pretty much with them working around the same time on both these books. I don't know for sure. I didn't check the timeline, but anyone knows for sure, let me know in the comments. I mean, this shot here, that's pretty much Venom kind of overtaking Dr. Fate, is it not, right? We've even got this kind of bit here where it's like twirly, inky bits of the symbiote like at Marvel. So Again, it's a hypothesis. I don't know for sure, but you know, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I like the surrealist touches, the little mouths on the fingers there. That's great. I mean, there's a great. He's not gratuitous with the splash pages in this miniseries, but there are a few, and they're really kind of well timed for cool storytelling beats. Like that's a great one. There's another one we'll talk about later. And now we've got some of the heroes involved, so it's fun to see kind of Giffen is riffing on their faces and the designs for the characters. Batman is very just in the shadows, right? Dark Knight has happened now, so that influence is all over Batman in any of his appearances, I guess, in DC Comics around this time. Death in the Family hasn't happened yet, but he's already become a much darker character than pre, Crisis on Infinite Earths, pre Dark Knight Returns Batman. Yeah, again, it's like, I see when I look at Miracle Man here, I kind of see the real mix of Munoz and Kirby together kind of into a new thing that's, something Keith Giffen will carry along that eventually doesn't really look like either of those guys. He's slowly learning to integrate it here. See, these are the shots that are very Munoz and just still stand out as kind of copying that almost literally. But then you get, other shots where he's using a completely different aesthetic here. More kind of classic cartoonist, I guess. A bit of caricature as well on the sides of the head. Colors I mentioned in this series, I still think are stellar. Just to throw in a red background, a red sky, like I've rarely done that. Kind of just takes balls. I've talked again about how I'm trying to pay attention to color and how just sometimes, you've got the differences in color choices, and not, again, because this is a surrealist book, not choosing colors that you are just literal to what the object is, right? Like objective color, basically, right? More subjective color where, if the subject is violence, you use red. If you want to kind of calm vibe to the scene, you're going to use blue, right? So you can monochrome it. And another great illustration of this demonic Dr. Fate. Love that kind of surrealist touch of the hand becoming a mouth. Kind of stuff I do in my own comics. Love surrealism. And there's a lot of it in this series. This is a nice sequence where they kind of confront the demon. He's kind of laughing them off here. And this great shot of him just blasting away Batman, charring basically all of his upper body there. I guess with this big, huge mouth's kind of stomach acid from some other dimension or something that he's conjuring up there. Just a great panel that, the layering of it and, what's happening, the action. Very clear, very concise. The crooked little fence in the background that he does here and there. Right. And look, he uses it very smartly, from all different angles. It's kind of a reminder, reminding you you're in the same space. Very nice touch there. I mean, storytelling is A1 here with Keith Giffen. He's already got all that down. Now he's just trying different fun experimental styles, That's what he's going to be doing for at least the next decade, I think, from this point on to after this. He does some other stuff, but I think I'm going to be jumping to Lobo Infanticide. Does he do some Legion stuff? Anyways, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I should look into that and buy those issues before I get past them. But anyways, if I don't, I am really looking forward to get to Lobo Infanticide. I think I've said that before. And then he goes back to the A story, really differentiating both parts, both with the layouts, right, with the quick shot of vertical panels here as opposed to the horizontal ones we got all throughout the last sequence, the color shift and a bit more of an openness with the negative space and the silhouettes here on these two pages really differentiate them from where we were before. So now we're with the character of Fate, as he explains. They peeled my mind apart, the demon, right? They ripped Fate's power out of me, but the funny thing is all that did was make me stronger. And I mean, that's all you really need to know for this next sequence. They're just working their way back to confronting the demon, getting Fate's power back. It's kind of obvious, right? By issue 4, that's what's going to be going on. We're still in the surrealist space that we saw past issue, so we're not going to talk too much about it. But just real quick is that, you could think these candles here are, just really big because they're in the foreground. But as the characters move around the space and past issues, you realize that maybe there are actually probably giant candles as well as smaller ones in the room that they're in, or this cavern space that they're in. Again, just clever layering here. I feel like maybe this is something as well that McFarlane is already doing, but could, really influence McFarlane as he's going through this book. Again, the idea for the Venom visuals, right? Love this shot here too. I thought this was just such a great panel, pulled out of context, like what is going on here? And the fluidity and the cartooning of the character, right? The fact that he becomes kind of a bit liquidy, I guess, is how I describe it. The impact here on the Phantom Stranger, and this burst of necromantic black energy, I guess is how I describe it, but almost kind of representing a mystic form of blood, right, being kind of punched out of him. This whole panel here is just very impressive. That'd be a fine poster. And then boom, he pays off once again with this great splash page of him just ripping the Phantom Stranger apart here, ripping his head off, it seems like, and it's, nothing's recognizable anymore. And kind of surprised that for a DC comic, they let him go this far, but I guess because they're in some sort of mystic realm, right? It's, again, very surrealistic representation, tentacles and leftover squibs and stuff, and it's just, you can't really qualify it as actual visceral kind of horror violence. It's kind of its own thing in its own language, and it's very fun. This is kind of a slight peak for me for Giffen and what he's kind of been able to pull off in this miniseries. And he's not writing it, right? So maybe he's got a little bit more time to, dwell on the visuals or something, or, just that extra little bit of thought that makes everything kind of super fun. But yeah, as the demon kind of is gloating and, his ultimate win over all of everything here, Fate shows up and giving us a hint of the final confrontation between the demon and Fate next issue. Anything interesting in the ads? Not much. That's a cool Arthur Adams cover. That size though, not as fun to look at. Well, I guess not. Well, that is it, guys, then, for my review of Dr. Fate, issue number 3 of the 4-part miniseries, excuse me. If you're still watching the videos and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. Questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments. Feel free to ask anything or answer some of the dumb questions I throw out there if you do have the answers or you have the info I'm looking for. A few people have done it in the past, and I always appreciate it and tend to respond pretty quickly. So there you go. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So speaking of comic books, check out mine, Big Baby and STARCRASHER at KINGCOMICS.CA. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe!